Do you hear that? Right. So thank you very much for coming. This is the launch of From Glasgow to Damascus by David Forrest, and I'm thrilled to see people here. It's a book that I've taken a special interest in. I feel very much at home with David's writing. It says what I want to say and haven't got the words for. And it's a mixture of stories and poems. And tonight you'll hear some of that, read by David, me, Hussam Eddin Baramo, who's one of our authors, and Farrah Akbik, who is a writer that I work with. And I'm grateful to Hussam and Farrah for saying that they would help, because it's good to have a few extra voices. While we're talking, it would be lovely if you could all put yourself on mute. So except for the people who are going to perform, could you put yourself on mute now? If you want to share a response, like you want to say you like something or whatever, there's a chat function at the bottom. And also in the chat function, I've put in at the beginning the links that you need if you want to buy the book. You can either buy it now and you get a discount, small discount because of the launch, or you can buy it at the normal price. And so those are links to my website. At the end, I'll ask people to unmute so that they can clap. And I know I shall be wanting to clap because this is amazing stuff. And you'll be able to ask David questions. So if you want to see a larger image of the person who's reading, in the top right-hand corner of my screen, because I have a laptop, and possibly the top left-hand corner of your screen if you're using an iPad, you will find a thing saying view. And if you click it, you can be either in gallery view when you can see everybody, or speaker view when you can see the main person who's speaking at that point. So that's very helpful. And I am recording this. You can be off video if you'd rather not have your face on the recording. Your name won't appear on the recording. And the recording will go up on YouTube, and I'll let people know once it's up there. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly introduce David for those of you who aren't fortunate enough to know him. David Forrest is a Scottish writer and a spoken word artist based in Glasgow. His creative work is featured at arts festivals throughout the UK, as well as various literary journals, anthologies, and BBC television. I'm very envious, I have to say. His interests include youth work, travel, and organising events that facilitate cross-cultural friendships. He has a scientific background, having previously published for papers in the fields of physics and e-science. Before the pandemic, his projects included a number of cross-art form collaborations in music and video. And that's all fantastic, but wait till you hear this book. So I now have enormous pleasure in handing over to David.
Thanks very much, Camilla, and thank you for publishing this book. It probably goes without saying. So thank you enormously. I just want to correct one thing. Although Camilla said I'm based in Glasgow, I'm mostly based on Zoom now. And I really appreciate that for most of you, you're mostly based on Zoom now too. So thank you so much for spending some extra time on Zoom. Like nobody says, do you know what I need tonight? I need some more time on Zoom. So thank you very much for actually doing it anyway. I really appreciate that. This is my first online pamphlet launch, my first online book launch that I've ever been to, either as a reader or a writer. So who knows what happens? I think we're going to define that now. If you're wondering what a pamphlet is, it's basically a bit smaller than a book. It looks a bit like this, so kind of like a handspan of poetry, essentially. And yeah, it's got some prose, it's got some poems. And I guess, just to say a few words about where this came from. So a few years ago, some friends and I formed a group to raise money to support international aid agencies that were working with refugee camps outside Syria, serving millions of displaced people that have been affected by the last 10 years of violence. And in that process, I kind of thought, I'm going into this with the goal, this high-minded idea of challenging others about how would you respond to the horrible events that are happening in Syria if they were happening to people in Glasgow or Edinburgh or London or Manchester? How would you respond? And what, because at the end of the day, they actually are, right? So, you know, there are people from Syria, people directly affected by these events in our lecture theatres, in our places of work, in the buildings where we stay. If there weren't, it would still be enough to move us to care. But the fact that there are as well just closes the distance in my mind. I went into this with that idea of like challenging people. What would you do to help in those circumstances? And what always happens to me when I try and challenge other people is I get challenged myself. And through the process of that, I met some exceptional people. I met, you know, I met people, it might have been, you know, aid workers, it might have been friends, it might have been colleagues, it might have been clients with a particular charity, it might have been fellow organizers, it might have been people I had one conversation with or people that I had years of friendship with. But they all really challenged me and challenged some of my default assumptions about, you know, a whole range of topics from like national identity to, you know, the politics of neutrality to friendship and loyalty. And this is what this pamphlet is about. So this is the pamphlet. And it is a collection of short stories and poems that are really, you know, things that I've learned, things that I'm thinking through, things that I've been challenged by, things I've learned from my friends. That's essentially what this is. And so some years ago, I put this together in its original form and tried to find a publisher. This is a very difficult thing to do at the best of times, but on this particular subject matter, it's not something that a lot of publishers are willing to look at or eager to do. Camilla is the exception, and if you have the time, please do check out Palewell Press. Even if you don't plan to buy something, it will warm your heart to see the kind of things that they are involved with. It's some absolutely fantastic work with Palewell Press, so please do check them out. And I'm really grateful, as I said, for Camilla, not just for agreeing to publish this, but so enthusiastically, just being so brilliant through the whole process. I hope I haven't put you off publishing for life. But yeah, thank you so much for all your help. And at the back of the book, there are some reviews that were written by Hussam and Farrah, and also Stephen. I don't know if Stephen's with us, but just thank you so much for being so kind and generous. And if you want to buy the pamphlet, it's worth buying just for the reviews. So that's something to think about. We're going to hear from Farrah and Hussam a little later. I thought I'd just start by sharing one piece that kind of catches the heart of what I'm trying to do with this. Before I do it as well, I just want to say if there's some truly fantastic organizations in Glasgow, and I'm sure wherever you are, that do really fantastic work. And I'm so pleased that we can help support refugee in Glasgow through some of the sales from this. So I'm going to read a piece called Echoes and Walls. And this piece is, how can I describe it? It's kind of one guy from Glasgow, one guy from Syria, and one feels like they can't talk about their problems because their problems are too big, and the other one feels like they can't talk about their problems because their problems are too small. So that's essentially what this is. So I'm just going to share that with you now. And you'll be treated to my coughing broadcast around the nation into your computers. So this is called Echoes and Walls. Saturday, I ask, how are things in Damascus? and you smile and say, fine, and tell me news of your brother and sister, and it's the same news you told me last week. I ask if they're safe, and you say they're safe, and I have the feeling that if I asked you whether they saw Love Island last night, you'd probably say, yeah, they did, mate. Thanks for asking. It's Saturday again. And I don't ask, how are things in Damascus? And you smile at, do you want to play FIFA? Smile, and I beat you 3-0 again, and you beat me 5-1 again. And we go for a walk and talk about work. And I get the feeling I know you a bit. I ask, how are things back home? And you say, not good. There's another curfew. It's been 3 days. You're worried about food running out. There's 12 people in your parents' flat now, and your father refuses to leave the country. Your uncle was picked up by the police last month. He hasn't been the same since. Says he's going to get in a boat. Your sister was screaming on the phone. We cry together. We pray together. You ask me how my parents are doing, and I say, fine. And it's the same news I told you last week. And you have the feeling that if you'd asked me whether they enjoyed a big, long shisha session last night, I'd probably say, yeah, mate, they did. Thanks for asking. It's Saturday again. I ask how things are with you, and you tell me that you feel guilty sometimes. You feel guilty when you turn on the light or sit down for food. I tell you what that sounds like. Like the only thing that's right is the bombings, and everything else is a sin. You ask me how things are with my family. I say, not bad, not bad. Dad's got a new car. I'm worried about the dog. Interview next week. Bit nervous. I won't get it. You say, you know how that feels, and ask if I want to talk. And I have the feeling that you mean it. So there you go. Thanks very much for listening. And it's my pleasure to hand over to Camilla. So Camilla has very kindly agreed to read one of the stories from this book as well. And we're going to be hearing as well from Farrah and Hussam, and then I'll read a few more at the end. But without further ado, over to you, Camilla. I think you're on mute.
There we are. I try and be on mute when other people are reading. This is a story called The R Word. I know it's one that Farrah particularly liked. The R Word. I could only pick one thing. So I took our centuries of literature and built a library in my heart. My wife took the mountains near where she was born. My 2 children argued over who would take dancing and who would take music. We smuggled our treasure through Turkey, never stopping, across train tracks and rivers, never stopping. We climbed into the same boat, knowing exactly what our chances were. Newspapers printed 1 million words per day, one for each of us. Words like asylum seeker and danger and crisis, placing all of them next to the R word, the danger word that threatened everything and described nothing. Not one of them said dancing. Not one of them said literature. Some of them said children. A caravan of refugees the nation saw. If only they knew the value we carried. None of this was new. At home, the state news condemned us as rebels, but we were proud. We had earned that title. We were gassed as rebels while protesting and shot as rebels on our way to work. They bombed worthless rebel children in worthless rebel streets. As the violence increased, the regime found new unblooded words for war. Now a siege is self-defense and a rebel is a terrorist. There are no murders in Syria, just another rebel dead. In Glasgow, we continued our rebellion, paying taxes, going to school, getting married. We were the lucky ones, the made it alive ones, the twos and fours from the hundreds ones. We learned how to say sorry, and where can I find, and do you mind if I? We had switched the things we used to have for borrowed words and places. Our children learned how to untangle truth from words. We separated victim from child and Syrian from refugee. Now a rebel is a dancer, a musician, an engineer. A refugee is a hero, never stopping. Every time we whispered the truth in their precious rebel ears, their smiles defeated a government. Now when I put my child to bed, when I squeeze my daughter's hand, I hear a truth. I feel a truth. I see a precious piece of Damascus, not as it became, as it should be, safe and warm and loved. Thank you very much for letting me read that.
Thank you for reading it. I think you did a much better job reading it than I would. So this is a piece called Listen. I'm not going to say too much about it, except perhaps just to say it's one of the few pieces in the pamphlet that are more kind of in a spoken word format. So if you've never heard spoken word, I always describe it like this. It's when you write something, you commit it to memory, and then you forget it live on stage. I'm a bit rusty at that, so I might just keep the page in front of me, but it is written for the sound. Bang. A protest coming to an end with a gun, then a gun, then a gun. Crack. A neck breaking beneath a tank, bodies breaking, homes breaking. Roar. A father's roar. Unsubstantiated by Russian sources as he finds the body of his daughter in the rubble of her school, destroyed, some claim, by Russian plane. He holds her in his arms, dead, allegedly. Rumble, the sound of a debate raging over whether a hospital was bombed by the people above or the people inside, the sound of pens battering jotters, of fake news rumbling louder and louder, drowning out the original rumbling and rising still further, drowning out the next. And this, yes, this is the sound of a giant sleeping in its bed. Arms that once took up arms hang limp. Mouth that once spoke now only yawns. This is the sound. Bang. Crack. Bang. Thanks very much for listening. And it is my pleasure to introduce Farrah. I've had the pleasure of reading quite a few of Farrah's articles. I would encourage you all to Google for them, because she writes about some of the most important topics of our time in a really accessible way that just helps you understand so much after you've read it. So I would really encourage you to absolutely check out her work. I understand that Farrah is both a poet and also a journalist, and yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have kind of met her through this adventure. And yeah, without further ado, over to you, Farrah.
Thank you very much, David, for that lovely introduction. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to Camilla for asking me to review this great pamphlet of poems and short stories. It was absolutely amazing to be asked to do that, and I enjoyed it immensely, and I think that shows in my review. And then I suppose thank you very much, David, for putting me on the spot and making me read one of them. So I hope I do it justice. But so I chose this one because it really stood out to me. It resonated with me a lot, and it yeah, so I was glad it wasn't taken. So without further ado, I'm going to read Jamal, which means beauty in Arabic. Jamal joined our team 7 maybe 8 months ago. Brilliant, head for numbers, MBA, never took a day off, even at the weekend. If he had one fault, and he did, it was that he was too quiet. My boss was worried he wouldn't fit in, so I was voluntold to be his buddy. Check on him at least once a week, ask him how he was getting on, etc., etc. We met for coffee on Fridays and ran out of things to say about 5 minutes in. I used to dread it every time, just sitting there, the silences. I wish I could tell you my Friday nights were any better. Nope. I ate cake and watched the news. There was a piece about a fox that got stuck on a roof, another about a festival in Manchester, and something about a bombing in Aleppo. Every night there was something about Aleppo. That's where Jamal is from, I think. I remembered reading his CV, then Googling for Aleppo University. The headlines were bleak, bombing after bombing. No wonder he was distracted. The next day, I waited for him at the water fountain, said hello, and then how are you, and then asked if he saw the news. He just stared at me blankly. I thought that was pretty rude. That night, I tried to sleep but couldn't. Numbers from the news, reports tickered my dreams. Another 100 dead, another 40 maimed. Not the things you like to think about at the end of the day. I wondered why they broadcast it, and I wondered why I cared. I messaged Jamal, and I asked if he had trouble sleeping sometimes. He texted me back an hour later and said he couldn't complain. He had a comfortable bed, just like that. No emojis. I told him about the numbers keeping me awake. Count sheep, not people, he suggested. Didn't work. My focus slipped throughout the day. Another 100 emails, another 40 rows in a spreadsheet. I felt my eyes wander off the screen as though the numbers counted less and less. No TV tonight, I told myself, straight to bed, and it worked. I woke early enough and fresh enough to go for a run in the park. You know, early morning park really is peak park, no people park, no families or noise, just nature and a chance to clear your mind. Find new ideas, like how to help Jamal. I hit stop on my running app, posted the time, 4 likes, and texted, Jamal, I know you can't sleep, but I've got an idea. Just don't watch TV before you go to bed. It works for me. I didn't get anything back. No, thank you. No, that's an amazing idea. I'll tell the other Syrians. When I sat down at my desk after lunch, I noticed a post-it note stuck to my monitor. No name, just the words, please stop talking to me. Must have been meant for someone else. There's always something going on in that office, in this office. Last night, I couldn't sleep again. I didn't watch the news. It's all the same anyway. Another dozen bombs, another 100 dead, another 1,000 refugees. I got a text from Jamal. It said, name the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Farrah. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Camilla.
So, yeah, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to read that, not just to write the review, but also to read at this event. And I'm grateful as well to Hussam. I have 2 fantastic Syrian writers that are reading pieces tonight. And if I could tell you, different things about Sam. I could tell you he's a journalist. I could tell you he's a poet. I could tell you that he's co-founded a publishing company or that he is an editor of a newspaper. But what I think I'm going to tell you instead of all those things is that this is his book and it's called Grave Seas. I got it about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and I've read it 3 times. So I encourage you to read it 3 times. I'm looking forward to my 4th time. But yeah, it's definitely well worth a read and well worth a reread. I would highly recommend it. You can get it from Palewell Press, who you may have heard about today. But yeah, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Hussam.
Thank you, David, very much. I did enjoy your book a lot, and I also recommend buying your book, and I will buy it as soon as possible. So I chose this poem because I am a refugee, and it's because it's very cynical. It's really, really good one. So I hope you can absorb the cynicism in it. And okay, it's called Fear Them. It's their fault, the refugees. Just ask the politicians. The refugee is the reason your grandmother waited 16 hours in A and E. They are your sawback. They are your gummy knee. They are the tax breaks for looters, the pay freeze. They are the cladding on Grenfell Tower. The refugee makes you work for less than the cost of living, whilst they sit in their grace and favor homes, exalted, respected, and indifferent. They swap philosophies about customs unions and trade barriers, whilst food banks thrive. They may debate the merits of Smith or Keynes. They may quote the great artists and philosophers, but make no mistake, this is no art, this is a science. We are the experiment. There's the idle notions. We are the lab rats, cheap and easy to replace. Just ask the newspapers. They will tell you who the real terrorists are. Don't let them scare you, the refugees. It's amazing what they can get away with when you are scared. Just ask the media. They will tell it to you straight. It's the fault of the refugee. Refugees bankrupt families. They teach your children how to throw up after every meal. They remind you every day over and over that you are not good enough. You are not good enough. You are not good enough. They make you cold, poor, and addicted. And when you think you have nothing, when you can't remember, sorry, when you can't remember the last time you knew that truth, that you are so special and loved and precious, then they take that feeling away and sell it back to you for a minute every month. Offer them no sympathy. All they care about is money. Understand that opening our door to the foreigner threatens our very way of life, the essential core of what it is to be British, to be human, to be free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hussam. Thank you for reading that. And yeah, I guess there's just one more piece left, and then I'm going to hand back to Camilla, and there's going to be a chance for everyone just to ask really easy questions. But I'm just gonna end with this last piece, and it's called Listening to Writers. think I'm just going to read it without introduction, really. And I haven't really read this before, so we'll see how it goes. Here it goes. A writer visited my school. No cape or pipe, but you could tell. I still have the notes dictated word for word. If you want to write, then first you must read. I think they also sold books. So I tried Jenkins, Gunn, Gregg, then Java and C. Read Shakespeare like it was Dickens and Dickens like it was Shakespeare. I felt jealous of their many words, crowding out the blank of the page and wrote nothing, nothing, nothing. The writers on YouTube said, travel. So I opened up my laptop in Paris and closed it in Berlin. I tapped my pencil against a table in Manchester and bit the end off in Bucharest. I came and saw and wrote nothing in Europe. The writers on the scene taught me how to scream. I repeated the same lines in different places until the gigs started to rhyme with each other and other writers clapped the titles. The words found a sound that was different, I think, depending who was listening. I wondered if they were ever mine. I edited, repeated, edited, repeated. I tried to write, but felt edited, defeated. I stopped listening to writers. There was nothing personal, purely professional. I met Sammy at the church food bank. The name he gave me, but not, I think, the name that was given to him. Maybe he's called Samir. Maybe Sammy was the first person Sammy met when he arrived in Scotland. He talked about life in Damascus when he was a child and life in Glasgow now as though nothing had happened in between. I heard the words, but listened to the spaces. Spent Wednesday evening at a cafe in Gibson Street. It was a Scottish culture night in Scotland, but the people I met there were from Mexico, China, Syria, France. Some of us stumbled through our first Kaylee, others their first Dabke. We learned each other's comings and goings. We took a trip to Skye and a trip to Lido and a trip to the necropolis. As the weeks went by, I saw the city appear again, as though a stranger had described it to me, told its story, unhidden its poetry. What does a writer do? They asked. Look inside themselves, I used to say.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And it's a really, really special set of readings that we've just listened to. Now, can I ask all of you to unmute yourselves if you can find the correct place to do it on the screen, and then we'll have some applause because I feel we really need to. Fantastic. Now, if anybody would like to ask a question of David or Hussam or Farrah or even me, could you please put your hand up and then I'll be able to say who it is. And unfortunately, to do that, you need to be visible. If you want to ask a question, you don't want your face to appear, just unmute yourselves and ask it, and I will do my best to work out who's talking.
There's a little hand down the bottom, isn't there, under the symbols raised?
There is, but people sometimes find that difficulty. It's called reactions. And if you click reactions and click the button which says raise your hand, then it puts a kind of yellow hand over the top of your picture. I'll show you there's one for me, you see? And then I can get rid of that hand in a minute. That's it. So is there anyone who would like to say anything or ask anything?
And just to get a few frequently asked questions out of the way, yes, you can buy multiple copies of the pamphlet. Yes, they do work as birthday and Christmas presents and any other type of thing. And just so not everyone is asking that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it doesn't matter if we don't want to ask questions.
I see
There
a
was an
hand up.
awful lot to take in out of all that.
I
That was
see
a pretty sort of
Sarah.
strong set of subjects.
I see Sarah has her hand up.
Sarah.
I
Sorry.
just wanted to ask, before we buy multiple copies for all our family and friends around the
Okay.
world, how much is the book?
The book is £6.90 and it's down at £5.90 at the moment for a launch discount. You have to buy it on the events page. If you look at the chat function and you go right back, use the little scroll bar right back to the beginning, I've given you the links of where you can buy the book. And
I don't actually see it.
I didn't see those.
right, if you go right back to the beginning, okay, well, if
Yeah.
you don't, basically my press is called Palewell Press, Palewell. And if you go to Palewell Press, through any internet browser, you will see a screen full of pictures. And one of the pictures nearest the top is David's book, From Glasgow to Damascus, big yellow letters against a dark background. I'll show you a picture of the book here. So when you see that, if you click that, it takes you to the place where you can buy it. So that's one way of doing it. But I'm sorry, because it's visible to me, but it's obviously not visible to other people. So my apologies for that. But the other thing we're going to do is we've videoed this evening. And if anybody is interested in having a link to the video, if you know anyone who wants a link to the video, let them know that they only have to contact me or David, and we will have that to hand. It takes me a day or so to check the video is done through okay and to upload it to YouTube. Then I tell David, and you can ask him or you can ask me. But, so, I mean, maybe everybody is feeling stunned and amazed. Sarah, you've got your hand up again.
I didn't catch the name of Hassan's book or Hassan's surname.
Hussam Eddin Baramo. Sorry, Hussam, do you want to answer that yourself?
Yeah, it's Hussam, not Hassan. With M.
Hussam.
And it's called Grave Seas.
Yep, I've got
Okay.
one here. So,
This is it.
yeah, there we are. It's got a picture of somebody rescuing somebody on the cover or trying to rescue them. Beautiful cover. So yes.
Was that a different publishers?
No, that's me.
That's the
Same publisher. I'm getting a lot of really nice comments tonight. We've published about 45 books so far, and it's tiny press, but they're all about people, human rights, or the environment, or people's sense of exclusion for whatever reason, maybe because they're ill or they're suffering from the dementia or epilepsy or whatever. So it's got that kind of feel to it, the press. And there are some stunning books. I can say that because I didn't write most of them. I just published them. And I'm really thrilled to have published David and Hussam, and feeling very, very privileged that you came to me, both of you. It's just interesting that your books are almost published in the same time frame. So it seemed like a good idea to put you in touch with each other. I'm really grateful. Any other questions before we finish? No? Okay, I think we have stunned and amazed them.
Excuse me, Camilla. I'm looking on it's Duncan here. I'm looking on the Facebook page for the event, and I can't see a link there for buying the book.
I'll post one there now. There's a link. I've just added a link to the chat right now as well. So that link should work for you. I'll put one on the Facebook as well right now. That's my fault.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to know that that there will be a link there. And at the moment, if you buy it, you're buying it from me, but I will be putting it on Amazon in a day or so. I like to have copies before I put it on Amazon because they get very stroppy with me if people try and order a book and it doesn't turn up within a few days. And so I've got a service level to meet, which is a rather terrifying thought for a publisher. So, sorry, I interrupted someone just then. Apologies for that. Okay,
Can
well,
I ask another question? Sorry.
go on, Sarah. I'm really grateful to have somebody asking questions.
David, I was very interested in the Jamal poem. My internet's not very good, so it's coming and going a bit, but do I gather that that is a friend of yours, or?
It's more, so that particular piece is really more, the narrator is kind of, I might have had a picture in mind of the narrator, mainly because just sometimes people can obviously come across in a very inconsiderate way, and that was really kind of the inspiration for it. It was some overheard conversations, or you know, things that you thought, really? And as I wrote it, I thought, oh, this is too ridiculous, it couldn't actually happen. And then I thought, no, actually, it's pretty close. So yeah, that was kind of where that came from. There were a couple of comments from a couple of people who spoke about similar situations that kind of inspired me to write that one, but it wasn't one specific person.
So it's sort of a composite.
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces in it that are like that, especially the political ones.
Thank you.
Because it's quite important, isn't it? If you're writing about people, you have to be very careful how you do it. And it could be as true as you like, but it might still upset them. They might not want their name used and all sorts of things. So I know you've been super careful about that. Yeah,
I think as well, as you write, I guess writing is different, I guess, from some other art forms, because you have more and more of your own reflection in there as well. So the way I think about this particular collection is it's things I learned from my friends. So it's not a verbatim record. It's not I hope, an assumed voice, or me putting myself in the shoes of anyone necessarily, but more just reflecting on what I've learned. And so there's a kind of a witness to that as well. So I guess that's part of it.
Oh, it's really interesting. Thank you.
In writing the book, David, was there one sort of overriding emotion that was inspirational in your writing?
Yeah, I think at different points there is a few different emotions that I think initially there was a lot of passion, and there was a lot of anger, and those things can drive you to write, but on their own they don't always drive you to write well. So I think it took a lot of time to kind of like work out where it was going to go, and there was a kind of more polemic aspect to kind of like the first draft, if you like, but eventually that grew and became a little more honest about what I was learning as well. So yeah.
The thing that first drew my attention when I saw the manuscript, which must be about a year ago now, are the phrases where you say things like, I want you to remember how you felt when you first heard about this. It's just small phrases on the left-hand side of the page, because what bothered you, I think, was that no one seemed to be reacting to what was happening. It just seemed to be drifting past.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a lot in how we talk about these things that happen on the other side of the world, you know, like and how we think about them as though they're happening in another planet, you know. They're not happening in another planet, and this is not a collection of pieces about something happening in another planet. It's about what's happening in ours and how we respond to that. That's a really important question for us kind of to ask ourselves. And that was really what the group that we started was all about. It was the idea is everyone's got a gift, everyone can do something. And what would it look like if we all did our thing? For me at the time, it was event organization and things like that. And so that was what I could bring. Someone else could, you know, tutor someone in English, someone else could, you know, the list goes on. What would you do? And yeah, I guess that's, I forgot the question now, so I'm just going to stop there.
Mm-hmm.
I see another hand up from Ian and Belinda.
Yeah, I've got a question from the point of view that I write poetry occasionally, completely different to yours, in English and Gaelic. But I was interested, what's your process? How does a poem happen for you?
Well, it used to be that a poem had to almost ambush me, you know, like it came when it wanted to, and it would be at the most inconvenient time. Maybe I'd be trying to sleep or go on with my job, and suddenly the inspiration would come and you'd have to write it down or it would go. But I eventually kind of got into, someone gave me some fantastic advice about writing, which was, just write. that was their advice. And what they meant was every day, write. I imagine if I was a painter, I might be able to paint a still life or whatever, or sketch something. And in the same way with writing, to try anyway, whether I felt inspired or not. And for me, the discipline of writing has been hugely helpful. So I can get sparked to write something by a news article, a headline, deliberately looking for something. But for me, the thing that does it the most is meeting people outside of my comfort zone, meeting people that have a different, you know, perspective to me, and talking to them. And that helps me reflect a little more on what, you know, I assume or what I think. And usually that reflection spills out onto the page. Sometimes well, sometimes not so well, but that's usually how it starts for me.
What about you, Ian? How do you find it comes to you?
All variable, but it does tend to be mad rushes. I tend to do nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing, and then something happens. But also, when I wrote, I spent a bunch of time one weekend basically just writing words down on a page and just chucking in all the words I wanted to use. And it was several weeks later before I could actually assemble them into the poem. Mm-hmm. But it was pretty much all the words I wrote down in the first case went in, but I couldn't work out how to order them.
That's an amazing thought, doing it like that. I generally get a line. Sound
as well, in a very Gaelic sort of thing of using the sounds as part of the thing. And so this whole thing of rhythm and sounds and sound alikes and just trying to create these trains of sound. So it's a very different thing that I'm talking about, but it was trying to work that out. So it's got the meaning and the sound together. And, you know.
And the sound has to reinforce the meaning, doesn't it?
Do another one, you know, I do something and then it's like, yeah, I go silent. And I've got no idea. And I've got another job. I'm super busy most of the time, so I don't even think about it. But, yeah, funny.
Jim, yes.
Just the same topic. Hi, David. It's wonderful to hear you and to see you again for the first time in over a year.
Long time no see.
Aye, desperate to get back in the scene, but there you go. Just talk about inspiration. I find I'm a poet as well. Often, the more I read, depends what you read, some things don't affect you at all, others get it going. But often it's a question of, a phrase, I'll see a phrase or I'll hear something, I think, well, I could make something of that. And it's like the kernel. And everything the poem can grow out of that.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at writing about such and such, and you have to actually think about it. That's much more of a slog.
Yeah, sometimes just a phrase comes and you go for it. You know?
Yeah,
Usually the last line for me anyway.
Well,
And you've
yeah,
got to work out how to get
then
there,
you
yeah.
go way back.
Well, that's quite a thought. We should really be having a workshop now, getting people to write stuff down, but it's probably a bit late in the
very
day.
well in lots of structures that I find difficult. So, yeah.
Well, that was fascinating. Is there any more things people want to say or ask before I close? It sounds like we're getting there. Well, I just want to thank everyone very, very much and to urge you to check out David's book and Hussam's and to listen to what David says and share that thought with other people. We shouldn't just let the sadness of others wash over us as if it didn't matter. We have to somehow get engaged in taking action. And it's a very inspiring book in that sense. And I want to thank you very much for letting me be your publisher. And thank everybody for coming tonight, and especially Farrah and Hussam for reading.
Definitely.
You're welcome.
Lovely.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And I will say goodbye now.
Bye,
All
everyone.
right, Helen, you've got your
Bye-bye.
hand up. Did you want to ask something?
No, it's okay.
Okay, you're just waving. Brilliant. Okay, bye-bye, everybody. And thank you very,
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.